Hi, this is Kate Does Crime. I'm just basically breaking the Murdaugh trial down in a couple days at a time, and then we'll be doing live discussions about it. So I'm just doing the first couple days, wrapping them up in a little, small video, and then in a day or two, I'll be doing a live discussion where we can all talk about it. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, please like and subscribe my video so you can be notified when I have those live discussions and you can join us. Basically, after picking a jury, they started with opening statements. Prosecutor Creighton Waters started first. He says that he believes that a family weapon owned by the Murdaughs killed Maggie Murdaugh, and that they found 300 blackout casings. They were in multiple locations on the property, and they believe those casings were loaded and ejected from the same rifle that killed Maggie Murdaugh. He also mentioned that the blackout rifle owned by the family has never been found. He concluded his opening statements by saying that cell phone records will be critical in the case. And according to Waters, Alex Murdaugh can actually be heard talking in a video that Paul recorded on his phone at the dog kennels just moments before they were killed. Defense attorney Dick Harpootlian said Alex was clearly traumatized in the 911 call and that he's innocent, and that he believes there may have been two shooters involved because of the two separate guns used. Paul was killed with a shotgun and Maggie was killed with a rifle. So also some things that were mentioned was, like I said before, Paul had recorded a video for his friend at the kennels because he was babysitting his friend's dog. And the video was at 8:44 p.m. and you can hear Paul, Maggie, and Alex's voices on the video. They also mentioned that a raincoat with gunshot residue on it was found at Alex Murdaugh's mother's house. They also found gunshot residue on his seatbelt. It was also mentioned that cell phone records will be critical in the case and the jury will hear crucial evidence, and that the Murdaughs were prolific cell phone users. They said Maggie and Paul had no defensive wounds, possibly suggesting that they weren't afraid of the killer. Their first witness that they called to the stand was Sergeant Daniel Green. I believe he was the first on the scene. He was working the night shift on 6/7/21. When he arrived, he saw Maggie and Paul laying in large pools of blood. He says Murdaugh was not crying when he spoke to him. In court, when they were recalling this body cam footage, Murdaugh started visibly sobbing and got really emotional in court. Also, when he arrived, Murdaugh had a shotgun. He claimed he grabbed for protection. Sergeant Green took that from him and secured it in his car. Also, in the body cam footage, they discuss checking under Paul to see if they could find a gun under Paul so they could eliminate that Paul was the shooter, and they did not find a gun under Paul. And after that was cross-examination. And defense attorney Dick Harpootlian focuses on excess water at the crime scene. He stated that it had been raining on and off, but the amount of water was not enough to be produced by the rain, which makes me wonder if maybe whoever did these murders, if they had used a hose at the kennel, maybe to wash off evidence and to eliminate footprints and tracks, just because they had talked about there being a lot of excess water. He says there was water inside and outside of the pens. Harpootlian claims that law enforcement contaminated the scene by not preserving footprints and tire tracks. The second witness they called up was Corporal Chad McDowell. They basically asked him similar questions, similar crime scene questions. He said that they found Paul's cell phone laying on his rear end. Paul was actually laying face down. I believe Paul was killed first, and Maggie was killed as she was running. She was shot as she was running away, and then after she was on the ground from right above her. Prosecutors play an unredacted recording of Alex Murdaugh's 911 call on the night of the murders. They have released Murdaugh's 911 call publicly, but it was actually redacted, and we were able to hear certain parts that had not been previously heard. In one part, the 911 dispatchers heard asking Murdaugh if his wife and son had shot themselves, and he says, no, hell no. And also in the unredacted phone call, he tells the 911 operator that he's going to go get a gun just in case, and the operator tells him not to go get one. And Murdaugh is heard saying that his son has been threatened for months. I think that was in regards to the boat accident and things from that particular case. And he was saying that Paul had been threatened because of that. So next on the scene was Barry McRoy. He's the fire chief of Colleton County Fire and Rescue. Murdaugh cries in court as McRoy details the gruesome murder scene. So, trigger warning, guys, real quick. Hold your ears if you don't want to hear this. McRoy describes the crime scene as where Paul Murdaugh is lying face down with his brain around his ankles. The next witness is Jason Chapman. He's a deputy with the Colleton County Sheriff's Office who responded to the murder scene. In his testimony with prosecutors, he describes how police did not know what they had when they arrived at the scene. So they didn't know if it was like an unaliving or if there was an active shooter. They didn't really know what they had walked into. He testified that Alex's demeanor changed once they began looking at the tire tracks. So something about the tire tracks made him very unnerved. He says Murdaugh was initially emotional and upset, but then he began watching investigators very closely when they started examining the tracks. Chapman told prosecutors that police investigators checked underneath the body of Paul for a gun, like I said, to rule him out as being the shooter, and they did not find one, so he also answers that question. He also testifies that he did not notice any blood on Alex Murdaugh's shirt at the scene. Chapman said, Murdaugh was emotional, and while speaking to investigators at the scene, and he says they swabbed his hands for gunshot residue. I also recall them saying that Alex had stopped at his mother's house that night for like 20 minutes. So what it sounds like they're trying to say is that these murders occurred, and then Alex went to his mother's house and came back and called 911. And that ties in with them finding the raincoat with the gunshot residue on it. Now, I could be wrong, but that's the vibe I'm getting. So after returning from recess, Chapman tells the prosecution that investigators found a set of footprints near the crime scene. He described this area as like a hangar, and it's across the driveway from the kennels. So the kennels were like over one side, and then across the little like road, there's a hangar. And that's where Paul and Maggie were found shot to death. He testifies that the footprints that they found were similar to the shoes Maggie Murdaugh was wearing when she was killed, so maybe they were her footprints. I've also heard that Paul was like half in the kennels and half out, so I don't know if he was over by Maggie, if he was over by the kennels and Maggie was over by the hangar or what, but or if they were both under the hangar. So Chapman also said that he asked Alex Murdaugh how Maggie and Paul had gotten to the kennels where they were found shot to death. And Murdaugh said that he speculated they drove Paul's Ford F-250, which was missing. And the police found the vehicle around 10:30 a.m. or 10:45 a.m. the next morning off Highway 63. Now, that's really bizarre to me, just because why he would speculate that, because from what I'm hearing is that he had lured Maggie there, that Alex had texted Maggie and asked her to come to Moselle so that she could go to the hospital with him to visit his dying father. And Maggie initially said that she would meet him at the hospital, but I guess Alex insisted and finally she agreed. But then Maggie had texted her friend because it felt funny to her, and she told her friend that, Alex was acting strange and he was up to something. So I'm guessing that maybe Paul was going there anyway and Paul had picked her up, but why he was like, I feel like he would have known what car they pulled up in. I'm also curious to, like, I'm not ruling out that there may have been a second person, because of the two different guns used, or if it was just Alex himself. But I definitely think Alex was on the scene and there, in my opinion, allegedly. So that's all I have for now. I'm definitely going to keep up with it, and I would probably do a recap video like every 3 days or so, just unless there's so much information in one day, then I'll wrap it up. I'll do a day's worth. But if I'll try and just write down the key points of what I think is important, and then wrap it up in like a 2 or 3 day video, and then